The title is Zombie Liars in Hell. Where this title came from, well, partly I'm doing a story every single day in the month of March, so I got to come up with a lot of titles. It gets real creative as the month goes on, but where this came from, a reader that has read some of my stuff on Godless was posting online and said that the things that she liked in a story were unreliable narrators. She liked zombie stories, and she liked stories set in hell. So I made a joke about that she needed to be ready for my next novel called Zombie Liars in Hell. And then, of course, as I'm looking for story titles for these days, then this one came up. And we'll see if I can actually make a short story out of it. Alright, Zombie Liars in Hell. This is the true and factual chronicle of the events of, let's not say events, of the acts of our Lord and Savior John Grief after he woke up in hell. John remembered the angels. He remembered, hold on, he had only vague recollections of dying, but he recalled them leading him out naked from the funeral home. Alright. Already starting off with lies. There you go. First sentence, lies. That's how unreliable narration works. So let's see what John has to say about himself here. He had only vague recollections of dying, but he recalled them leading him out from the funeral home naked. He expected heaven. He certainly didn't think he deserved it, but he also never really bought into an afterlife. So when all those naked angels showed up for him, he figured all was forgiven. Well, that's not how it went. John took a long moment to lift himself off the hot lava rock. He could almost convince himself that he'd woken up in Hawaii, but he had his suspicions where he really was. He was dead, but he was still fresh. Very little rot had set in. There were some discolorations on his skin and dark fluids gathered in his swollen feet. all in all, he thought he still looked okay for a walking corpse in hell. Alright. He was in Orlando. That's I think every state has some place they think is reminiscent of hell, I would imagine. Sometimes it's a neighborhood, sometimes it's a school, sometimes it's a place of work. Sometimes it's a town, and sometimes they're probably right. Alright. What next? He thought he might like to find some clothes. He wasn't... Alright, hold on. He wasn't ashamed of anything he was packing. He had made a good living with his equipment, even into older age. He also had the good sense to move behind the camera and start keeping more of the money. What the other folks in the industry did not know about him was that he started writing books a few years before he died, under the name Walter Evil. He wrote Splatterpunk, and some of the books got popular. A few got optioned. One was in pre-production. Life was looking good. So, of course, this was when his ticker finally gave out. John was not alone out on this spit of rock in the midst of a sea of molten heat. Alright. Well, that would be the same paragraph if I talk about who the guy is. Alright, obviously another story of Armand Rasmelia. There you go. Armand when he was in the adult film industry and started writing extreme horror under a pen name, borrowing straight from his life. John was not alone out on this spit of rock in the midst of a sea of molten heat. Sort of a classical view of hell, I guess. Dante's hell was cold, so we're going a different direction. This guy wore a suit despite the heat. More rot had set into him, so maybe he had been there a bit longer. Holes in his cheeks opened onto rows of straight teeth that were still shiny white. one eye sunk lower than the other. It gave the fellow a stupid, sleepy look. One side of his nose had collapsed. The other side of his mouth drooped, where the lips were split and blackened. Something oily leaked out from one side of this stranger's body. Turning the suit slimy and glistening down the pant legs. That's far enough, John ordered, trying to sound braver than he felt. The guy held up his hands in a calming gesture that didn't really work when the guy trying to calm you was dead but still walking around in a lava field. My name is Gus Gantry. Pastor Gus Gantry. That part don't matter much anymore. John snorted at that, and it hurt in his throat. Something cold and foul broke loose back there, and he forced himself to swallow it down. Weren't much of a pastor if you're down here with me, Gus. Gus smiled, splitting his lips even further. He'd be a comic book villain if he didn't stop that. No argument here, partner. I was a poser in life. I had it all wrong. But here we are, and I'm supposed to guide you. Guide me to eternal damnation. I don't think so. Alright. I put too many letters in damnation. Hold on. Alright, there we are. To eternal damnation. I don't think so. Gus shrugged. And part of his suit came loose at the seam. His skin was a bad color and texture underneath. Well, you're already here. Might as well get settled in. Unless you're happy with this spot. In that case, I'll leave you be. What other options are there? Gus tilted his head and something popped on his neck. The stuff from that boil flew far. I'm apologize if this is getting too gross here. Spending J-coin is is worth less than Russian rubles. Oh, value rises and falls. You should just hold on to it. Has your boss found you hiding in that closet yet, Frank? I'm wishing you the best in dodging your work. The stuff from the boil flew far enough to sizzle in the bubbling magma. I guess it's magma. If you're in hell, you're underground, so lava would be magma. I am the boss. Oh my goodness, you ran a takeover. I think John may be running a takeover here at his work too. The stuff from the boil flew far enough to sizzle in the bubbling magma. There are a few camps. There's always work to be done. They might conscript you at some point. Then, of course, every place has a boss. Who's the boss down here? Gus? Gus shook his head slowly. Shook his head slowly. You know the answer to that. Come on. A real life devil. John had bet against all that nonsense. But now, here he was. Tony Dance is the boss. Well, I mean, it's hard to argue. Probably says it right on his contract. A real-life devil. John had bet against all that nonsense, but now here he was in hell, following Pastor Gus over the rocky slopes away from the sea of fire. The sharp stones hurt his feet. He felt the sole, felt the heel of one foot tear, and he suspected that wasn't going to heal. Going to get better. I don't want to use the word heal twice, even though it's two different words. Hold me closer, Thomas Duffy. I see what you did there, Mr. Frank. Nice stuff, nice stuff. Lots of layers to those references. He felt the heel of one foot tear, and he suspected that wasn't going to get better. I need some shoes and clothes. John grunted. Good luck with that. You have a suit on. Are you going to steal mine? I don't think it's your size. By the way, I didn't catch your name, friend. John Grief. And I'd prefer something less leaked on. No offense. Wait until you've been here a while, and you'll see. They topped the hill, and there was motion through the winding road in the next valley. Several souls were chained together as large creatures wearing armor and with leathery wings folded behind their backs. Alright, several souls were chained together as large creatures wearing armor and with leathery wings folded behind their backs, whipped the prisoners along the way. Gus said, "We should hold up until they pass. You don't want any part of that business." Where are they going? Gus hummed a moment and then said, "That way leads to the mines, and then the castle beyond that." Whose castle? Come on, John. Don't be dense. John started down the hill. What are you doing, man? They'll take you too. Just come on, Gus. You're my guide. Guide me. I'm trying to. Gus followed him down the slope at a slight distance. But you won't listen to me. John stepped into the lines of chained slaves. Farther down from the nearest demon guard. Most of these folks were naked too. Their skin had grayed. When he bumped them, trying to make his way around, their flesh broke away in sheets, exposing dark bones and shriveled organs underneath. He found one skeletal woman wearing a flowery dress that still looked remarkably clean. She opened her jaw with a creaking sound as if to bite. John, mostly from reflex, threw a punch. The skin over his knuckles split, but her head came clean off and bounced away in the rusty sands on the other side of the road. Her headless, skeletal body kept walking along with the others, still in their chains. John, are you out of your mind? We haven't been spotted yet. Let's go. Hold on. He inspected her chains and found that she was still shackled at the wrists, ankles, and waist. He couldn't get her out of those bonds. But if the rest of her bones were as loose as her head, ... he started kicking and chopping her. Sure enough, her bones broke loose at the joints and fell out of the bottom of the dress. The other gray prisoners behind her stumbled. The other gray prisoners behind her stumbled and tripped over her remains. Let's say one of the whips cracked and then snapped again, much closer. Gus called. They're coming. Come on. Would you? To his credit, to his credit, Pastor Gus did not cut and run without John. John pulled the empty dress loose from the chains, shook it out, and then pulled it over his head. It was a little snug and a bit stiff with filth on the inside, but he wasn't naked anymore. Material was a bit hot for this environment. Material was a bit hot for this environment, but he decided to make do. Then the whip snapped close to his face. Gus whined, "Oh hell." John grabbed the whip on the next attempt and played tug of war with the demon. The creature pulled him out of the crowd and growled at John in an ancient tongue did not understand. John ran at the monster instead of away. Creature tried to step on him. But John tripped him up with his own whip, and then the demon whined as he ran away on all fours. The other demons approached. And Gus said, "You've really done it now." "You haven't seen anything yet," John said as he adjusted the hem of his dress. The demons came in swinging, but clearly they were not prepared for resistance. John whirled and snapped his new whip, driving them away. The last demon tripped twice during his retreat, and John caught up with him. The demon begged for mercy in broken English, but John ignored it as he stripped the creature of its sandals. They were a bit large, a bit on the large side, but he cinched them up. All right. "What now?" Gus asked. "We're in big trouble." "We're in hell. How much more trouble can we get in?" "Oh, you just wait, John. They specialize in punishment here." John realized the entire line of prisoners had stopped and were staring. He cleared his throat and announced, "You guys want to help me with something?" There was silence in response, but he took that as agreement. "Gus, help me find some keys." Raiding party, thank you. Appreciate you dropping in. Writing about a guy creating a rebellion in hell, so we'll see what happens with that. Slips quietly, no radio. Okay. That's funny. Nothing to see here, nothing to see here. Alright, scene break. I think I made too many returns there. Hold on. Alright. Nothing more exciting than seeing someone format a scene break. Alright, here we go. The mines were places of torment and suffering. The demons in charge were used to cries of agony. They ignored all that. We come in peace with donuts. Well, we'll stay then. Zombie Liars in Hell is a fantastic title. Thank you. I worry sometimes that I come up with titles and then can't follow it up with a good enough story. Fortunately, there is editing to try and make stories better. After the first draft, they ignored all that as they continued to fill out the mountains of endless paperwork that always seemed to pile up in hell. Alright. I always have a difficult time of not going back and editing while I write. I'll do that sometimes. But here, especially on stream, but even more so, even more in my life now, just, real life, I guess, where I'm not writing for an audience. I do my best to just kind of power through the first draft, kind of not worry about getting the first draft perfect, not worry about every word choice. If I'm using the same word over and over again, I kind of, maybe I try to adjust it, but I try not to worry about it, and then I just correct those kind of things in the edits. Now, the flip side of that is that I have to be willing to do more edits. So every short story I write, I do about 2 or 3 editing passes, usually 1 on stream and then 1 or 2 off stream there too. If it only piled up in now. Sure, this is a sign that of what things will be our torments in the future. Same. I try just to fix typographical errors. Me too. Avoid Michigan. Avoid paperwork. A lot of people are naming places that they think may be parallels to hell now. Editing is hard. Now there'll probably be a lot of editing in hell, I imagine too. It might be all editing and never any final drafts. Some writers put themselves through that already, where they do endless edits. All right. They only looked up when the screams finally got louder than usual, and a few of them sounded triumphant. Well, they couldn't have that. It took them a while to get out because the knobs on the office doors here always seemed to get stuck. They thought it might have something to do with materials expanding in the heat. Alright, I will go back and spell do with just one O. I'll take care of that right now. But moving right along. As the doors swung open, they witnessed hell falling apart. Towers toppled and broke up upon the hard rocks. Outbuildings. Well, let's spell something right while we're here. Outbuildings exploded, and shrapnel fell everywhere. Other demons fled the scene as thousands upon thousands of souls charged the offices. Of course, now, hold on, let me make that a new paragraph here. Of course, now that the doors were open, they wouldn't close back in their frames. The formerly tormented souls forced their way inside to deal out some torture of their own. As the demons were taken down and torn apart, the name that was repeated, the name that was repeated over and over was John Grief. Scene break. All right. Gus stared out the window of the train as it rolled toward the great castle. Gus stared out the window of the train as it rolled toward the great castle. Countless people from all ages of man filled the cars, clung to the outsides, and sat upon the roofs. You said, I don't know, John. This seems like a bad idea. No offense, Gus, but I don't know that what you had to offer me in hell was much of an option at all. You keep saying no offense, but I'm not sure you mean it. John shrugged. Can you get us inside? The train will take us straight in, but then you have to face him and all his forces. I'm not terribly impressed so far. I think he might keep the better ones around him at the castle. We'll see. What's the worst that could happen, Gus? Gus shook his head. That's not a question you want to be asking down here. Well, my guess is that they can't kill me twice. The dying never ends down here, John. John snorted, and again he felt damage in his throat. He had to remember to stop doing that. Hell was a dry heat, and it was screwing with his undead sinuses. The castle loomed large around the next curve, and sure enough, just as Gus had told him, the train roared into a broad, dark tunnel under the stony structure. Cheers rose from all over the train. Some of them included chants of John's name. He hadn't exactly told them to do that, but he didn't discourage it either. All right. Commotion rose from the walls above, loud enough for John to hear over his own army. Gus met his eyes and said, "Well, they know we're here." John smiled. They should have expected us before now. I'm guessing from the stream title you're doing a story a day this month. How are you enjoying it? I like it. I think I needed the creative boost because I've had a lot of things happen recently that have kind of pulled me down a little bit. So it's a little bit of an exercise just to kind of get the creative juices flowing. I don't expect every story to be great. Last year I did this in May, and a number of the stories that came out of that month were some of the best I'd ever written. I don't claim that they're the best ever written, but the best I've done. And a number of them made it into a short story collection that I had come out recently. So I do like the process. I also like the freedom to kind of experiment with types of stories that I wouldn't write necessarily if I were just doing the stories that I plan to publish immediately. So in some ways I get to kind of explore a little wider when I do so many stories at once. And I have the freedom to kind of get one wrong if I decide to experiment and it doesn't go real great. But then I also kind of surprise myself too. So especially as the month goes on, and especially in the later half of the month, I expect that I'll find some surprises as I start digging down into some stories that I probably wouldn't have written otherwise. So I think whether all the stories turn out well or not, I think I benefit as a writer just from the exercise. And I imagine this may be something I do once a year for the foreseeable future. But yeah, I was really excited to do it this month, partly because I wasn't feeling great and kind of wanted to work out some of the cobwebs and get myself back into a creative groove where I was doing a little better work than I have been in the past, or in the recent past. Alright, John smiled. I'm not sure if I got this dialogue right. I may have to punch it up or rework it in the edit, but we'll keep going. John smiled. They should have expected us before now. The train engine echoed through the dark spaces under the castle as it sped on. John's smile wavered. Let's have him say, where's the station? Alright, I need to capitalize that. Gus's eyes got wide enough to be seen in the darkness, even though they were different sizes. The demons usually run the trains. Do you have anyone up in the engine? Nice. I'm glad it's helping you. There's an event that happens every January and August that you may be interested. 31 days, 31 stories. I'd seen that. I couldn't remember what months people had done them. I may need to just jump in when people get onto it. I know that I do NaNoWriMo on stream in November, so I'll write a novel from start to finish over about 20 to 30 days. So I have seen some other writers do it, I knew it was a thing, but I couldn't remember what month it was. I may jump in on one of those months. Let's see, August would probably work better for me than January. Usually January I'm coming off of the holidays and have a few things to jump onto to get back on track. I may try it again in August. That would be fun. The demons usually run the trains. Do you have anybody up in the engine? The sound of the crash carried back through all the cars. Screams filled the darkness as people were thrown off the sides. Cars derailed as they broke from their connections and tumbled. John felt like he was rolling forever, eating the elbows and knees of people tumbling around inside the car with him. Buried under all that humanity, John felt like it took forever to dig and fight his way back out. The tunnel was dimly lit, and broken train cars blocked the entrance. It took forever to add an extra letter there. All right. People were twisted and broken as they quietly moaned in pain. No one seemed to have died, though. Maybe that wasn't an option here. Gus stood next to John with his suit in worse shape than before. Okay, what now? You were my guide. What do you think? I think you never should have tried this. Well, too late for that. Okay. Everyone who can still walk, let's see if we can't find some stairs. scene break. I don't know if this ending's going to be any good, but I'm going to go ahead and get this story down, and then maybe I can expand it when I edit the first time. But let's see what we can do here. All right, the fighting was heavy up through the winding walls. All right, just a moment there, Armand. The fighting was heavy up through the winding halls. The place was a maze, and John feared he might be lost in here forever. Finally, they reached the upper floors. And found wide, tall doors. John set his remaining... Hold on. John set his remaining army on forcing their way into the throne room that lay beyond. Alright. Armand Rosamilia has redeemed 1,000 channel points, which means he's probably watching this too much and wants a fun fact. Alright. I don't have a lot of credits to my name in terms of like a biography. I could probably fit in 1 or 2 sentences all the various awards and recognitions and stuff like that that I can claim. But the first one I got was Best Horror of the Year. I think it was Volume 5. And that's edited by a pretty well-known editor within the horror genre named Ellen Datlow. So I had just gone full-time as an author, as a writer, and I got an email from Ellen Datlow saying that she wanted one of my stories for the Best of the Year. And I swear I thought it was a scam. And so I went and looked up her name and found her public email address, and it was the same as the one that had emailed me. And so I contacted back and said, yeah, I was interested. And she asked for a copy of the story, and I sent it. And it was just this, like, part of it was such a weird story. It was just this weird little zombie story called Dead Song, which eventually I expanded into a series. But the story itself was a guy in a sound booth, a guy with no name in a sound booth, doing a voiceover for a documentary about the zombie apocalypse, and that's the whole story. It's all show, it's no tell. I mean, it's all tell, no show. It kind of breaks all the rules about writing, so I didn't really understand why that story would be picked. And I got the contract, I signed the contract, I sent it in, and the whole time this is going on, I think it's a scam. Like, I think I'm being scammed. I'm waiting for, like, to be asked for money and all that. And then finally she announces the table of contents on her public site, and my name is there. And that's really the first moment in all those communications I had with her where I really believed that I wasn't being taken for a ride. So that was kind of the first time that I announced it to everybody, because I swear up until then I thought for sure that I was falling for some kind of scam, and that the moment I told everybody, they would just think I was foolish, and they'd be like, okay, why did you think your little zombie story was going to get into Best Horror of the Year and that kind of thing. And for years I didn't understand why. Like, I kept rereading the story trying to figure out what she saw in it, and then as I wrote more and more, I kind of figured out why the story worked and why she liked it. But I was so green and raw at that point in my writing career that I really didn't understand what made a story good or not. It's still a little bit of a mystery to me, like when the moment when one story really catches and lots of people agree that it's good, and then when another one that I thought was pretty good turns out to not be so great. And then especially years on, when I look back on certain stories, I look back on some of the stuff I wrote early on that I used to think was good, and then and for the life of me, I can't figure out why I thought that back then, which hopefully that just means I'm improving. But that's the fun fact for today. When I got a story into Best Horror of the Year, the whole time, I didn't announce it for a long time because the whole time I thought I was being scammed. But it turned out to be for real. So unless she comes back all these years later and says, surprise, it was all a trick, which probably wouldn't surprise me a bit. But that's our fun fact for today, Armand. All right. Is this it? John asked. Gus looked around and said, I'm not sure. I've never been here before. I'm shocked we made it this far. All right. The doors buckled and then fell away. The souls of John's fighters rushed in ahead of him. Red light blazed out and seared through many of their bodies. As they fell, still screaming, never dying, there was a moment that John swore they would turn and run, leaving him alone. But they continued forward. They cried the name John Grief as they pulled the former king from his black throne. I was thinking of picking a name of somebody to be on there besides the devil, but can't really think of anything right now, so I'm going to leave that blank, and I might add that in later on as I think about it some more. I don't want to pick anything political, and I don't want to go with somebody that sounds like I'm trying to throw in Beyonce. Oh, Armand, for those of you who may not be familiar with Armand Rosamilla's stream, he does a great writing stream that you all should check out. And one thing I do to him, in friendship and kindness, of course, is every time he kind of pauses and says, okay, what was that? What was her name? And goes back up to find a name, I always tell him the name was Beyonce. And I even did a story with someone named Beyonce here this month. But that's where that joke comes from. All right. Which wouldn't be, I mean, if someone's going to rule, why not be her? Okay. Once they had him, John wasn't positive what to do. He looked to Gus, who gave a slight fearful shrug. John swallowed on his dry throat and said, "Bring me some chains." Okay, scene break. I'm definitely going to need to add more into this story for it to be full and fleshed out, but I think I got the bones there. We just got to figure out what punches it up into a story that's worth reading, I guess. Okay. And that is the true story of how hell changed hands. John Grief rules the underworld to this day, with Pastor Gus by his side. He looks over the gardens, the dance clubs, the mini golf courses, and the various fusion restaurants that have come to be in his great city during his benevolent, I don't know what I was trying to say, reign. And by his side, as a reminder to any who might cross him or threaten to hurt his people. The former king kneels in his chains beside the new king's throne. May he reign may Lord John Grief reign forever and ever. Amen.